Join us as we listen to a powerful testimony from a resilient individual sharing their journey of self-discovery and the challenges they faced in a society where acceptance often comes at a cost. Brace yourself for an eye-opening narrative that sheds light on the struggles and resilience of the human spirit. Listen to this brave individual's story, and let's come together to promote understanding and acceptance. Share your words of encouragement and support in the comments below. Together, we can create a more inclusive and compassionate world. Here we go.
Wall of text warning. I feel lost and confused. Should I leave my toxic, yet dependent parents behind? Am I the asshole in this entire situation? Hello, Reddit. First things first, good morning, afternoon or evening to whoever stumbles upon this post. I should start with a few notes. I'm new to Reddit in general, despite my account's age. This is my very first post on this entire website. Comments aside. Also, English is not my first language. I'm self-taught, so I apologize for any basic mistakes on text formatting or at generally expressing myself. This text contains personally sensitive information and topics, so it has been costing me some mental struggling and sleepless nights to remember details. Some that I wanted to forget, and write it all down, but it needed to be done. I also apologize for the length of this post, but there are just too many details that need to be mentioned, and I probably am still forgetting a few things here or there. I'll just hope that no key topics are forgotten, but I need to post this before my anxiety becomes a snowball over the task of writing this text and I just end up being unable to publish it at all due to anxiety for currency conversions that will be needed in certain parts of this text, in attempt to give the readers a better view on how financially complicated my situation and the general economy is. I will be using the USD BRL rate from October 10th, in which one United States dollar equals 4.12 Brazilian reals. I will end up repeating a lot the expressions and quote, my bio mother and quote, father and quote, throughout this vent and request of help. My apologies if that ends up being annoying, repetitive or redundant. I just can't think of another literal yet not compromising expression to refer to them. This forced relationship has just nuked every bit of love that I one day felt for both of them, and I just don't want to give wrong hints. And, as a footer to my initial notes, I want to thank you, dear reader, in advance for the time and patience dedicated to read this vent and possibly hand me some advice. I'm a 23 years old, about to turn 24 in January, Brazilian male. Born, raised and living in São Paulo, the richest state here. May be fairly trivial to some, but there are also people who don't know that. Currently unemployed despite trying and applying constantly since I was 17, and have no degree nor am studying at the moment. My family has always been pretty poor, and the only house we actually owned was inherited by my bio mother, after my maternal grandfather's passing. I'm the second kid of my bio father, who also has a kid he has never seen or talked to in the last 20 years or more, and the youngest of my bio mother, out of 5, having 2 half-brothers and 2 half-sisters, one of the 2 she actually raised, and the only stuck in this uncomfortable situation, to say the least. I have been wanting and attempting to leave this household for over 2 years now, but had no success yet. A friend of mine, who has been like my spiritual father, the one I never had on my bio one, has plans to help me out by December. I have quite a lot of reasons for that, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't, hesitant, at least, slightly panicking, inside, even. I'll admit I've been quite desperately wanting craving for some help to get my shit together and decide, though I just never knew where to look for it, until I stumbled upon this subreddit. I will try to write and keep the yeses and nos properly separate and not mix things together. Not too much, at least. There is a variety of topics that needed to be detailed, so please, be patient with me. I have about a month and a half to decide. My reasons to leave are the following. 1. A terrible local job market. For the last 6 years, I have been trying to find a job in this damn place without success. I live in the coast of Sao Paulo, where lie some pretty rich cities, most with a population above 300k, some even almost reaching 400k already. For being touristic places, aside from quite scary crime-related reputations some of these cities have, most of the regional economy revolves around commerce and services. Back in school, I applied for a program called Camp and Quat. Here, which is an integration between school and employers, that I believe to be regulated by city and or state governments. This program picks students of public schools based on their grades and attendance to offer them half-time entry-level job positions, to bring them some base knowledge and experience while they also study, and the employers pay them around between 40% and 50% of the minimum wage in return. I think I was 15 or 16 when I applied, against my will, and I admit I was stupid as fuck for that, because now I admit how getting work experience early is helpful years later, and a few weeks later I get a reply. I don't have any clear memories of that today, but my bio mother claims that my application was denied. And quote, because my family's monthly income was too high and quote. The program never had any explicit or implicit limitations or rules to exclude applicants based on their family's income, but unfortunately it happened to me. Later I found out that it was probably a branch of a larger corruption scheme, or a small one operating on its own, since these are pretty damn common in this entire country, and within this region, especially on my hometown. Few years later, I started on this journey that is still going on today. Almost every single job opening here requires either previous experience and or a degree, or a driver's license plus the applicant owning a motorcycle or car. When not, they are either exclusively female only, cashiers, sellers, receptionists. Recently even restaurants have been wanting only waitresses, or reserved for people with disabilities. Some cashier openings also fall within this category, and I even stumbled upon a restocker opening within this category. Just to clarify, a driver's license for both cars and motorcycles on this region of Sao Paulo costs between 1,800 Brazilian reals, around 437 United States dollars, which is almost 2 entire minimum wages, and 3,000 Brazilian reals, around 728 United States dollars, 3 entire minimum wages. Prices may vary, and yes, there are discounts sometimes, though these prices do not include government taxes and required exams. So, I just can't find a full-time job. Not even talking about salary issues. I know very well that it's common practice to pay as little as possible to certain entry-level positions here. The only 2 times something more serious was offered to me were back in 2016. When I attempted to work as a waiter for a small restaurant in the richest city on the region, and was just a ferry and a bus away from home, and the owner wanted me to work 2 months for free, claiming it was unquote experience and quat. And December of last year, 2018, when I worked a few days in a new, very fancy and expensive restaurant that had recently opened in the same city, but the work conditions were even worse. From 12 hours of daily work. From 3 p.m. or 5 p.m. all the way, no overtime payment, no benefits, not even a transportation voucher, common and mandatory here. No tips, since I would be a waiter assistant, who worked twice as much and fixed every single mistake made by the actual waiters. No dinner break, only a quick meal before the shift began. Without any drink other than water from the kitchen's faucet. And the Brazilian basic sanitation tends to be rather questionable, to say the least, and no actual registration, so it was just a fucked up job from a place that wanted decent employees but claimed to be unable to pay them properly. Forgive me if what I'm about to say makes no sense at all in attempt to prove them wrong, but since their opening night, their reservations were full, and their average income of each night tended to double everyone's monthly pay. And it's still going that way. I genuinely feel bad for the people working there, and hope they find better positions as soon as possible. 2. Narcissism and lack of basic respect. As I grew up, conflicts began to develop between me and my parents, mostly because I was growing tired of the classic and quat. Act like an adult while being treated like a kid and quat. Treatment commonly given to teenagers. Constantly bossing me around, treating me like all I should do is obey, controlling my free time, imposing chores, including religious ones, bitching at me and berating me for low grades, which will be detailed on the next paragraph. Physical punishments when I was a kid, complete denial of privacy, for example. When my bedroom had a door, I couldn't even close it. That still happens and quat. Because we don't have enough space in this apartment and quat. Despite my numerous complaints for that, destroying my things, like the 5-year-old Wii I once had, and last year and the rare mechanical keyboard I once owned, and trying to destroy my things over ridiculous arguments and quat. Because they paid for these objects and quat, or giving away part of my stuff. As I began questioning, talking back, standing up for myself, or trying to, I suddenly became an quat. A terrible son, a deception, a shame for them and quat. I only had my first, own bedroom, when I was 18, and on top of the usual, having to keep my door open, and quat. I had to plug the PC on the wall opposite the door, so they could see what I was doing and quat. Most schools here tend to grade students on a 0 to 10 scale, instead of FA. I couldn't even study alone, in peace, NEVER, despite the consistent pattern of my grades falling under that endless pressure, being constantly monitored to the point of having bio mom coming to me to check on the monitor to find out and quat why I was laughing and quat. Because and quat, if I was laughing so much I was definitely not studying and quat, and even sitting behind my back sometimes, watching it, to and quat. Ensure I was actually studying and quat. When I reached high school, things eventually a tad more annoying. All this stress began weighing on my back by that time, despite me having no idea of what was happening to me that time. I was just confused and insecure, feeling insufficient and partially determined to try harder. As my grades and quat tanked and quat, according to her, the pressure only became worse. So did the complaining and control. By high school, my state used specific books provided by the government itself for the teachers and students to use. Bio Mom spent 3 entire years bullying me into answering every single question of each of these damn books, despite the teacher mostly not using half of their contents, because there were other more useful books and subjects to be discussed and taught in their classes. Tired of that shit, I admittedly cheated, and I have absolutely no shame on that. I spent a few hours searching for answers online, until I found complete scans of the teacher's books, with all the answers, for the entire high school period. I'll admit I still giggle today about this malicious compliance moment. Well, she wanted the books complete, and she would have it. Every single time my teachers asked for certain pages of the books to be completed and gave a certain deadline, all I did was to hand them my already answered books. They almost always looked at me dumbfounded, and I regularly had to explain the reason behind that to them. None of them understood completely, nor did ever confronted her about it. Some of them actually called her insane, though, but never did anything against it. My classmates were even more dumbfounded, and looked at me confused. Some angry even, since I already had the answers, but I openly explained it to them. Luckily, I never got punished by any of my teachers. I hardly learned anything, but at least I wouldn't be spending a lot of time struggling to figure answers my stressed mind would hardly find by itself most of the time, and she gave me a bit of peace for a while. That peace didn't last long though. I remember clearly, when I was 17, I took a qualification exam to try studying to become a systems analyst on a quite high-level public school of my state, and without studying much due to an exhausted mind, I ended up in 77th place as the results came out. To qualify for the course, I would need to be between the top 40 students. What followed that result was a year and a half of bullying from both my parents for not qualifying, subtle humiliation, little jokes here and there at home, and even making sure to remind if every time they met someone and I was close, when the subject of my future career would be brought. It seemed endless, and caused me to lose all interest in studying, to the point of atrophying my mind. I used to be constantly treated as a somewhat inferior person, through many subtle acts and gestures. For example, I was only taught their white rice recipe 4 months ago. My bio mother used to do most chores at home, including for me, while encouraging me to stay studying, and now act like I absolutely owe her for that too, and simply hate when I say I can't or won't stop what I am doing to go do whatever she wants me to do at that exact moment. I was also constantly bullied for gaining weight and being fat in general, to the point I pretty much stopped caring about appearance in general. It didn't stop there though. Job hunting was also twice as frustrating, because despite going repeatedly to places to always hear the exact same no or go apply online while being constantly pressured to go out and search for a job I also frequently got complained at because I sweat my clothes too much. Partially for being overweight, and partially because of genetic inheritance, considerably elevating the spendings with soap and fabric softeners, that I have to admit, work very well to eliminate odors, therefore costing them more for no return. They even wanted to completely deny me social interactions, meeting friends, anything they deemed unnecessary claiming That and quat. I had no right to go out to have fun or anything like that, because I was not employed. Nor studying, so I have no reason to do it and quat. My bio mother always did that, and my bio father never did anything against it. And quat. Listen to your mother, she's right and quat. He always said. It only seemed to stop when the apex of disrespect was reached at that specific topic, that I will detail later. 3. Seemingly hypocrite, faith, religiousness and other beliefs. I was born and raised under a Protestant Christian family. Or at least I thought so. Both my parents are fairly abusive in their own ways. My bio father is, or at least used to be, the most hypocrite of the two. While he used to be and quat, a church rat and quat, since years ago he used to spend the majority of his free time, and a good portion of his own income, at the church. He was and is also extremely sexist, arrogant, judgmental and hateful, though began stepping back as my bio mother began standing up for herself, at least partially. He always was somewhat addicted to pornography in general, and used to attempt to treat his wife as an quat. She had the moral and religious duty of serving her husband and being completely submissive to him, like the Holy Bible says and quat, including demanding sex, regardless of her will. She used to give it to him for a while, as it tended to make all of us living together easier, at least for a short period of time, but a few years ago she decided to be completely done with him. He also cheated on her 3 or 4 times, but always came back as things went downhill. Humble and sweet for a while, but as he felt stable once again, he eventually returned to be the exact same asshole he always was. If it wasn't by my bio mother, I'd probably equally hateful by now, or at least it would be harder to develop the views and opinions that I currently have. He always wanted to control the music I listened to, the cartoons I used to watch, wanted to deny me any access to anime. At the time some TV channels used to broadcast Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yu Yu Hakusho, Inuyasha and others, just the animations I tended to enjoy the most for their stories, because they were and quat, satanic and quat. Because and quat. The pastor said sir and quat, and would hardly have any pop culture knowledge as of now. I must give bio mom that credit, and it's pretty much the only thing that came from her that I'm actually grateful for. When he got a smartphone though, it didn't took long for him to be caught with porn, which he denied, even called both me and his wife and quat, crazy and quat, and quat, severely disrespectful and quat, for that. In the most recent occasion, where I found 23 porn tabs that he just left open, which even included zoophilia, on his phone's browser, he literally destroyed his phone, that I later fixed and gave to my older brother who's another asshole, but was in need of a device to work, and attempted to kick both me and his wife out of the apartment. As time went by, both showed signs of being slightly violent, and mostly verbally aggressive when I didn't show myself obedient and completely passive to their views, beliefs and orders, especially when directly questioned over some of their pointless rules. I don't understand how my bio mom considers herself a Christian, when she reached the point of encouraging me to commit suicide, or at least try to. Back in 2012 or 2013, I don't remember the exact date, we were having quite a heated argument when it came to the point of me, once again, mentioning how I hated myself and my life, for these exact reasons. By that time, To my surprise and shock, the reply was and quote. Then why don't you kill yourself? Go on, do it. I dare you. And quote. She said, handing me a kitchen knife. I stared at her, speechless for a few seconds, only to reply that I wouldn't do it. She laughed, and even called me a coward for that, and, well, I partially agree. I never had enough courage for that. It hurts to think of it, honestly, but not that much. Maybe because I'm not all that attached to her anymore. But I still do care about her. Recently, my bio mother has begun acting quite more annoying though. She has become a flat earther, and partially anti-vaccination in general, almost at the same time. To the point of even apologizing to me for taking me to and quote, have venom injected into my veins and quote, when I was a baby. Ironically, this was the only time she has ever apologized to me for anything, since I began emotionally mirroring the stuff I've been dealing with, in order to defend myself for, and quote, responsibilities and quote. Since the initial stages of this entire situation, I've been finding myself quite depressed for the huge sensation of guilt. Simply because I find myself completely surrounded, impotent, and it has been slowly and quote, killing me and quote, at least mentally and emotionally. Hell, I can't go through a single day wanting to leave this household without feeling guilty for thinking about what can happen to my bio mom, despite being a bitch. I have been frequently blamed through these last decade or so for and quote, making her accept my father back and marry him again and quote, despite only actually asking for her to let him live with us once again. And quote, other kids at your age were emotionally smarter and defend their mothers and quote. She says. I recently argued with her once more about it, and she only takes responsibility for actually accepting him back, claiming that registering both as married once again and quote, was a natural effect and quote, of that, despite not loving him since years before. She blames me for it because, if she wasn't actually married, she would have inherited part of her mother's military pension. Just around 60% of it, but still would be more than my bio father's last 3 average salaries just by itself. I have been partially blamed for her selling her house, inherited after her stepdad father's death. The 3 of us wanted to leave that neighborhood, for the toxicity of the neighbors we had, added to emerging criminality statistics. The 3 of us wanted to live somewhere else, to try living in another place, and we couldn't rent that house because it was very old and needed a lot of repairs that we just couldn't afford. I take part of this responsibility, because I had promised her that I would study to get a degree, study for a scholarship, since they could never afford to pay or even help me paying for college, even if I had a job, because I thought that the place was the cause of all that stress and these conflicts between us. My bio father also promised her he would study, way less than I would need to, by the way, to grow in his career, which paid really well at the time, but he never did shit, nor did I, for feeling unable to do anything. I don't know about him, but I kept feeling the same stress, the same weight, the same bad energy surrounding me, the same and quote, mental blocks and quote. For years, I only kept hearing repeatedly that and quote, I'm not worthy of any trust and quote, that and quote, I have no honor and quote, and quote, I am not enough of a man and quote, because and quote, I lied to her, and on purpose and quote, and quote, I was never true to my word, and real men honor their word, regardless of the price they have to pay for it. Frequently, I also used to hear that I am also responsible for her current labor situation. If I hadn't spent so much on you, with all these fancy electronics, I would have been studying by now and would probably have my own job already. She doesn't want to work any entry-level jobs anymore, and instead only wants to work after she gets a degree, because that's what my bio father promised her, that she would only work if she wanted, and after studying. To clarify, with fancy electronics she refers to my old Wii, bought in 2007 and destroyed by her 5 years later, a PSP that never worked properly, back in 2008, a Samsung Galaxy 5 in 2010, Samsung a Galaxy S4 a few months after it came out, and 2 PC rebuilds that I was given. The first PC rebuild was given to me because the previous one was so old that it was performing very poorly, and the second because of malfunctioning parts. Everything was chosen by her, aside from the PC parts. I had no power over any of her choices to actually go buy something, and hardly even asked for stuff, as far as I can clearly remember. The Wii came when I asked for a PS2 for Christmas, back that year. The PSP was a reward for good grades, when actually I had the best average score of that grade in the entire school that year. The Galaxy S4 was chosen by her, after months of me asking for a phone replacement because 3-year-old Galaxy 5 was struggling to even boot sometimes, was hardly even working properly and had terrible battery life, which caused some arguments and near beatings because it was my task to call her as soon as I left school. Yeah, I know I had a lot for a rather poor kid, and I did really enjoy the stuff I was given, but I don't really think that the fact that I was given all that stuff, that my bio mom decided to give me these objects buys my freedom, my peace of mind, my life. I kept even telling her that I'd rather be poor to the point of having to work since I was a child, and never have access to half of the fancy stuff that I had, but have truly loving, supportive parents instead. And what I hear is that I am extremely ungrateful, and I should thank God for being born here instead. I don't mean to offend anyone, nor to be actually ungrateful, but I just wanted to be a loved kid. Because I frequently had poorer classmates who were considerably happier than I was and am, and had more freedom than I ever did, and now, after meeting some of them years after, I kind of understand why, despite still asking myself why I had to grow up being treated without the most basic of respect, as if being unworthy of that, and constantly having to prove myself, through certain means only, that I was worthy of their love and support. I never had criminal issues, never did drugs, only took my first drinks years after turning 18, only ever skipped school twice, and she never found out. Never did anything to my bio parents for that. 5. Homophobia. I grew up believing that being homosexual is wrong and a terrible sin that must be corrected. But back when I was 16, I began questioning my own sexuality, and it took me some years, precisely 5, to switch from straight and disgusted at the thought of 2 men having sex with each other to bi-curious to bisexual to definitely homosexual to pansexual as I dated a transgender girl, and now I see myself as bi-curious again, though mostly homosexual. Even the very first person I genuinely trusted enough to intimately touch me was another man. Before even my parents knew, my older brother, who I gave the aforementioned fixed phone to, just threatened to run over me with his car. That the arrogant fucker no longer has, and quat. If he caught me being a faggot and quat. Simply because I used a joke I've been using for years with friends, which is replacing and quat, okay and quat, with and quat, okay and quat. Just that was enough to simply trigger such hate, all of a sudden, despite being quite the Protestant Christian himself. A rather conservative one, despite his age and knowledge, but still, one day, all of a sudden, after months dealing alone with the pain of losing my first ex-boyfriend, she came to my room to ask me and quat if I wanted to be gay and quat. I asked why, and she just replied with and quat. God had showed me a few things and quat. I replied positively that I indeed was gay, and felt relieved at her quite surprisingly nice and initially welcoming reaction, and thought it was a sign that my life would change for better from that day. Boy, was I wrong. Less than 4 months in, the first signs that she didn't actually feel anywhere near and quat okay and quat with it. Subtle, but they were there. She was yet to tell anyone about it, but little to nothing has happened until then. It took less than a year after the reveal for the major sign to show up. A little over a year ago, there was an international hotel con happening in a nearby town, just a single bus from home. I had plans to go see friends from other states who would visit the region for this con, but couldn't go yet, was unable to afford 6 bus fares, 2 for each day, since I wasn't allowed into the con space itself once I wasn't signed up. That was until a friend offered to pick me up at home and take me there, since it was on his route anyways. I didn't hesitate much to accept and began preparing to go, at least for a few hours, relieve the stress and give some people I miss a well-deserved hug. My bio mother began bitching at me because and quat I shouldn't go and quat she has no social life and quat I'm not studying nor working. Therefore I shouldn't go out and quat I don't need it as I'm not being useful at all and quat. Her whole aggressive speech. The reason why I'm putting this event under this topic was her following act. Once I was offered a spot in this friend's hotel room for the con for one night out. The verbal attacks evolved further, to the point where I would be in quat completely wrong and quat personally offending her and my family and quat for going out, for a single night, to meet with friends I haven't seen in ages, most of which I would not see again in a year or more. When became clear that it didn't work, as I was about to leave, she yelled and quat, "Yeah, I know you're going to." And quat, "Get my fat ass fucked," and quat, loud enough for the only neighbor we had at the time on the same building, and even my bio father, who's the most homophobic person I've personally met, to hear. Luckily, he didn't. Thank God. We were in an even more fucked up financial situation by that time, so all of us were way more stressed, but still I believe that this is not an excuse to do what was done. 6. The effects on me by and quat. Atrophying and quat. My mind. What I mean is that I lost most, if not all the interest I once had in learning, aside from the capacity to learn. I mean, I just hardly absorb information, and even harder it is to retain said information. I can spend hours trying to study. When it comes to a quiz, I just realize that I learned nothing at all. Stuff is completely forgotten, and/or my brain just doesn't work to solve the questions anymore. From school related content to pretty much even things that I used to have an interest on. I have no clue of the reasons that led to that, and I apologize if I end up being at least partially wrong, but that's the only assumption I believe I can make, since this effect took place after that period of domestic bullying I endured for a failure. My brain, my mind simply does hardly retain any information anymore from most topics. My short-term memory is also pretty much gone. If I didn't take my phone everywhere and write things down on a note-taking app, I'd be damned. It's not uncommon for me to get requested to go get 3 products at supermarkets located 1 or 3 minutes away from home, and end up having to call my bio mother at home because I completely forgot what to buy, if I don't save it in a note. Growing up here, I ended up finding myself insufficient, and it has definitely traumatized me in general. Losing my first ex also boosted that feeling, but that's not the point. This permanent feeling is one of the reasons I absolutely hate myself. I have been hating to be me, to live this life for years now, and it has only gotten worse with time, as years go by and nothing changes, leading to only more frustrations building on top of each other. On top of being gay, all the frustrations I've been finding myself accumulating and the negative tendencies I have inherited from both of my bio parents, these being present on my behavior sometimes also completely killed any interest I could potentially have on having any kids. I just can't see myself as a good father by any means. I don't want to end up adopting a kid to have them suffer under my hand at least 1/10 of what I suffered due to my bio parents' shitty behavior, issues and arrogance. I already told bio mom before, and quote, once I can finally leave, I will never come back to this household. I swear to God, I would genuinely rather starve to death than live under the same roof as you once again, and quote. And I mean it. I never had any freedom, any peace of mind, if I was never even worth their actual, and quote, unconditional and quote, love, true, support or the minimal respect. Why would I return? Plus, if and quote, I was never true to my word and quote, then I must to be, at least once, and quote, regardless of the price I have to pay for it and quote, like herself kept saying over the years. I lost the faith I once had. Not entirely, I don't know how, but still. I now identify myself as an theist agnostic person, for me still believing in God. But, what if I am wrong, and may God forgive me for that question? I mean, if God is omnipotent, omnipresent and omniscient, and actually responds to my bio mom's prayers to the point of comforting her sometimes, then why he never did address the issues she has been causing me for over a decade now? Why am I the only one carrying this burden of guilt and fear of consequences? Of failing responsibilities that I don't even know if are mine, and will definitely fail for being impotent. Why, out of the give kids she gave birth to, only me, the youngest and the only one who craves for his mental and emotional freedom, must have it denied because the other 4 are too busy living their own lives? Why must my bio mom's safety cost me my dreams, my passions, my identity, my happiness, my will to live as a whole? To be honest, I even partially thank God for being gay now, because I want this curse, these bad genes to die with me. I don't feel like I have anything valuable to teach, nor want to risk creating another troubled human being. Of course, that opinion about myself can change after I get treatment, but this is my current state. The only rather positive effect that I can find is that I also became generally more art-oriented individual. Due to all that, despite completely lacking both talent and skill, and personally surrounding myself more with amateur-level writing, I even wrote a small poetry book myself for my first ex-boyfriend, following more digital and traditional artists, connecting with them in general, and even slowly regaining my interest on learning to draw, which was an old childhood dream I had to abandon, because I was constantly pressured into studying actually useful things and these being school-related content. And now, after I pretty much done complaining about my life, here comes the reasons to stay, the causes of my insecurity. 1. Technological illiteracy. None of my bio parents know how to operate a computer until today. It's frustrating, especially because they constantly blame me for that. I will indeed admit that I feel this guilt, because I had promised I would teach at least my bio mother the basics of Windows and stuff, though, as I ended up facing her more abusive, narcissistic side and more specifically her generally passive-aggressive and I can do whatever I want to you because you are my son attitude. At certain times, I just lost interest on approaching her in general, let alone teaching her anything. Now I have been blamed constantly for her limited knowledge, despite herself having never showed any spontaneous real interest in learning anything. She can use her phone pretty well, understands the basics of searching on Google, chats a lot on WhatsApp and watches YouTube, but just spends her entire time learning actual science and through YouTube videos of small flat earth and or actual doctors and channels. 2. Bio mother's complicated situation. She has been out of the job market for the last 20 years, always been a stay-at-home mom. Now, I won't judge her choice of lifestyle, but the thing is, adding her bad decisions on top of that, she seems to be pretty much stuck to my bio father, who's also quite abusive every now and then. Not only berating, screaming and breaking things sometimes, just like herself, he actually beat her once. And only once, when I was a baby. Bio mom also claims that he actually tried to rape her twice during her sleep, and effectively did it once, but she has never took any attitude against it. Never went to the police, never attempted to contact her friends, who actually offered her a place to stay twice, never even had any voice recordings of anything, never reacted, not attempted to defend herself with the laws, simply because she has no income, nor a place to stay and I attempted to explain to her countless times that social assistance does stay by her side under such conditions, especially for being a woman, but she doesn't listen. Never did, nor ever will. Aside from that, I still care a lot about her, despite not even knowing if I should. I just don't know if I would be able to forgive myself if anything bad happened to her. I feel responsible for it, because if she hadn't sold her house 5 years ago, she would still have at least a roof over her head, and wouldn't need to pay rent. She is alone, pretty much. I am the only one here and for her, and despite being tempted to leave because part of me knows I'm worth way more than that I don't deserve to carry this burden, to deal with half of these problems. I'm also afraid that she won't make it out and end up killing herself. Well, I don't even see a way out for her, and can hardly do it for myself. But I want to try. I need to try. Almost a quarter or a third of my life has passed, and I just need more. I need to live, not exist. I need to at least find myself somewhere, somehow. She claims that it's a temporary thing though. And that and quote, God is preparing something for her, enough money to get rid of her abusive husband and quote. I used to feel something, to believe in that, but I don't know anymore. Plus, I know, she did suffer with an abusive mother on her early years herself, but that doesn't give her the right, nor a valid excuse to be abusive with her children. And quote, Lord, if you know that she's just throwing excuses like I do know, why are you giving her, the abusive side of this relationship, a way out? And quote, is what I keep asking myself, or asking God. I just can't understand. 3. Stupidity. Both my bio parents are my apologies for the term, stupid. They can be very easily scammed, and I am the only thing keeping that from happening every now and then. They rely completely on me to read contracts, offers, check prices, check facts, everything. They depend on me to make purchases, for internet banking, for complaining due to poor services, to keep track of support protocol numbers, to maintain their contact lists, to back up their data sometimes, to and quote, care for their phones and quote, and fix them whenever they break something, to scan and store the documents, to go get mail and check if they got what they purchased, to check and go pay the monthly bills, pretty much everything more technical. And of course, I am also the one blamed for everything that goes wrong. They depend on me, but treat me like I should bear with everything. Because they need me, and quote, children must take care of their parents, especially as they get older, and it is the will of God and quote. So, my apologies if anything was poorly written or explained, and even for this sudden ending. But, here comes the question that I can't answer by myself. Should I stay, or should I finally go away? To everyone who read this entire event until the end, first, despite my self-hatred and mentions of death, I have no intention of even attempting to committing suicide, simply because I don't have the balls for that. Forgive the term. I tried my best to be as transparent as possible on this vent, and I'm ready to hear all the replies, being right or wrong. I don't even know anymore. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the attention dedicated to reading this Wolfo text, and deeply wish I could give you something in return, but unfortunately all that I can do is to sincerely wish you all nothing but the best in your lives.
Thank you for accompanying us through this deeply moving narrative. Your support means the world. If this story touched you, don't forget to spread the message of empathy and understanding by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Stay tuned for more compelling stories that inspire change and foster compassion. Together, let's continue to amplify voices that deserve to be heard.